Welcome to Home Farm. Today we're going to be replacing our kitchen tap. As you can see, our old tap has got a cold and a hot control, which means that every time we want to turn the tap on, we need to balance the water out because either the water is too cold or too hot. So we've decided to go with this monoblock unit that has got one control for the hot and cold water. As you can see, in terms of style, they're both very similar. It's just a little bit taller. But the fact that it has got a central control for the hot and cold water will just mean that we don't have to constantly fiddle with two taps. This tap has got one single control, which means it'll be a lot easier to regulate the water, and it's going to make it a lot simpler when we're cooking and washing up. The one challenge I think that we're going to face is that this is a Belfast sink, which means that working in the area where the pipework runs, it's extremely tight. That means getting your hands inside and any tools to try and loosen or tighten the valves is a little bit tricky, but we'll show you that in a minute. While we're at it, we're going to re-silicone behind the tap. The previous owners had used the silicone that wasn't mildew and mold resistant, so we're going to strip that out, clean it out, and re-silicone. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to close our stopcock. The stopcock is basically a tap that prevents mains water from getting into your house. So I'm going to turn this to the right, righty-tighty. We're going to close the water, and as I've done that, that means that now there is no mains water coming into this house. As an additional safeguard, I'm just going to turn these 90 degrees. And what that does is it now prevents water from coming through here up towards the tap. We're now going to see that there's no water coming out. Completely sealed. So to get the tap off, we have to get underneath the sink and loosen the two nuts that are presently holding this tap in place. The tap that we bought has got a different mounting mechanism, which we're hoping is going to be a little bit easier to work with in the future. But yeah, Kirsten's now just trying to get her hands in there. She's obviously got far smaller hands than I do, so it just makes it a little bit easier for her to loosen stuff. Kirsten's also just put her safety goggles on. There's quite a lot of dust that's coming down, so it's just a good precaution to have to protect your eyes. So Kirsten managed to get in, she loosened the nuts. I've gone in and got rid of the little bracket that was holding the tap in place. As you can see, the design of these Belfast sinks leaves a lot to be desired. It requires a lot of contortions and acrobatic maneuvers to try and get in underneath. But gradually, we're getting there little by little. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out the silicone that's around here. This tap should now be loose-ish, as we can see. There we go. I'm not going to tug it too firmly, but there we go. That's it loose. Now that the tap's loose, we're going to disconnect the flexi pipes that are running into the tap, and this tap will then come out. I also find that from a design perspective, because the tap is so close to the edge of the actual kitchen surface, it allows food and all other kinds of stuff to get in there, which isn't particularly great. So, you know, from that perspective, it would be better to come up with a design that actually negated some of that. In truth, I'm not sure that this is applicable to all kitchens. This is something that the previous owners had done, so maybe this is just what they decided to go ahead with because they thought it was a good idea. But you can just see how much moisture and stuff just gets trapped in that little crevice at the back. And not using the right silicone also doesn't help when it blackens and just becomes a little bit gross. So because we've been given new flexi pipes, I've just decided what I'm going to do is actually just remove these ones, because then the whole tap will just slide out through the top. What's really important about these particular nuts is that, unlike every other nut in the house, I don't know who thought of this, but they turn the wrong way. So these ones you have to turn right to loosen, as opposed to every other screw in the world that you have to turn left to loosen. So by turning right, they will come off. I've already loosened them with the adjustable spanner because That's the only one that actually fits on there. So by extension, when we put the new ones on, we're going to turn to the left to tighten them. We've taken the tap off, we've cleaned the whole area, removed all the excess silicone. Now we're going to be siliconing ourselves because obviously we want to have access to this area. We use this silicone from Dow Chemicals. The reason we opt for this is because it's mildew and mold resistant, which means that you won't get that horrible black stuff forming on top of the silicone over time. We've applied the silicone and it looks good. Now we're just going to give it a little while to set before we continue mounting the tap. Every tap is different. So I'm going to show you how we've assembled ours because the principles are usually largely the same. The biggest issue that most people face with taps are these nuts at the end that actually attach to your pipework. They struggle to fit through a lot of the cavities in some of your fixtures for the actual tap. So the way to do it is to do everything in reverse. So these will go underneath your worktop surface, which will connect to your pipework. And we're going to assemble our tap in reverse. So we're going to take our two flexi pipes, the first piece, as you can see, it just slides over really, really easily. And once it gets to the bottom, it's got nowhere to go. In our case, we've got this screwy bit, which basically is what's going to allow us to tighten the tap and get a good fix on it. I'm going to just slide that in and just tighten it ever so slightly so that it's all in one piece. And then we're going to go over to the tap, push these through from the bottom through the actual worktop so that we have these protruding at the top. We will then mount them into the tap, put the fixture on, and hopefully it'll all slot together. It obviously helps if there's two of you doing this because obviously one of you is going to be underneath the worktop, the other one's going to be above it. So I'm going to go underneath the sink, I'm going to pass these through the worktop, and Kirsten will take them through and then we'll try and assemble it all together. So the flexi pipes have been tightened. As per the instructions, we've left the tap at 90 degrees anti-clockwise. The reason for that is because when you get underneath and you tighten the screw, once you've taken it as tight as it can go, you will then turn the tap this way to position it straight on. That tightening action will make the tap sit very tightly to the worktop surface. So it's on. After a fair amount of contortion and buckling underneath, we've managed to get it on. A really good tip for this particular tap, and any ones of them that have actually got what they call a black locking nut, is that you're not allowed to use tools. So trying to use your bare fingers, you're going to shred them to pieces. So use a bit of protective gloves because it allows you to turn it without actually lacerating your fingers. The last thing for us to do now is to go back underneath the worktop, connect the flexi pipes back to the water. I don't know which one is hot and which one is cold because the previous owners had not labeled them. So we've got a 50-50 chance of getting it right. If we don't, we're going to have to disconnect everything and just switch the two flexi pipes around. Absolutely exhausting. Who needs to go to the gym and have an ab workout? Anyway, that's done. Both the flexi pipes are connected. We're now going to release the stopcock. I've already tested it once, so I know that it's working. Stopcock is fully released. Both the flexi pipe settings are up, which means that water is flowing in that direction. So regarding these two little screws, they're not screws in the sense that you have to tighten them and release them. All that means is that when that line is pointing up, that means that the flow of water is allowed to go that way. If you want to stop it, you can either turn it to the left. That will stop the water. You can do it that way, or you can do it that way. It doesn't really make a difference. So when that line is running at 90 degrees to the actual pipework itself. That means water is prohibited from flowing. And when you straighten it, that means water is allowed to flow. I'm going to now open. Hey, we're flowing water. And now let's see whether our 50-50 gas was correct. To the right. Yeah, boiling hot. To the left. Freezing cold. And down the middle. Nice and warm. And while the water's running, we'll just check underneath the sink just to make sure that everything's staying dry, that we haven't affected any of the other pipe work. Everything's looking okay. So there you go. Mission accomplished. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you on our next video. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. You can also follow us on Twitter or check out our website at myhomefarm.co.uk. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button below, and if you have any suggestions for any other videos you would like to see, please leave a comment. We hope to see you on our next video.